there's this fear that people are going to see something, they're going to be exposed in some way, right? That oftentimes impacts the kind of relationships that you can have, whether it's friendship, romantic, or with family members or neighbors, any relationship.
If you're seeking good friendships, right, rather than waiting for people to show up, what are the steps you can take to develop yourself so that you become that good friend who can show up?
If there's one thing that I'd recommend in changing a challenging relationship, I would say appreciation. I think appreciation opens doors. And I think for me, appreciation doesn't come naturally, but there is a tool that I have to bring out appreciation. And that's chanting.
From SGI USA, I'm Cassidy Bradford, and this is Buddhability, the weekly series where I talk with Buddhists from all walks of life about the power we each have to change our lives and the world around us. Hi, Cassidy from Buddhability here. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe. It'll help the show out, and you'll never miss an episode. If you want more Buddhability content, you can subscribe to our email newsletter in the link below. We put out great content every week. Enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, to Buddhability, a very special episode. We've been doing these special topic episodes, and today's episode is about relationships. And all of you work in mental health fields and have lots of professional and personal experience that you can apply to this topic. And of course, you all practice Buddhism as well, so we're going to be talking about the connection between those things. What does Buddhism say? What are therapeutic perspectives? How do they overlap? Maybe what is different? So just to get things started, so everybody gets to know you guys, I'll have you each introduce yourself, and then you can share just why you got started in the mental health profession. So I think maybe I'll have Apurvi start.
Sure. Thank you for having us, Cassidy. Yay. And I'm so excited to just spend time with you, Cam and Sophia, today. My name is Apurvi. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm currently working as a clinical assistant professor in counseling psychology, and I'm also the training director of the Master's Clinical and Mental Health program here. Why I started in the field is not a straightforward answer to that. I honestly wanted to become a medical doctor and was prepping for that in high school in India. And I really didn't get into a school of my choice at that time, which I'm very grateful for now. But I remember having a big breakdown on my grandfather's bed that time. I felt like my career was falling apart. But looking back, I think, becoming a doctor or an engineer was just a natural choice based on my socialization growing up. So I ended up pursuing my undergrad in psychology as a result of that. But it was truly after that, I think, that my worldview really expanded, and I started to become aware of the patriarchal society of India from a lens of psychology, and just began observing gender dynamics playing out around me, and also the use of cultural fear and guilt to force women to make choices that are maybe personally not as meaningful. All of that, of course, leads to many mental health challenges, right? With depression, anxiety, lifestyle issues, even physical ailments, resulting in challenges at your work or marriage or families and all areas of our life, essentially. So, of course, I really embrace a lot of those rich values of the Indian culture, but I really saw this strong need to strengthen institutional structures and their ability to really realize personal fulfillment for everyone. And I used to also practice Nichiren Buddhism at that time that really believes in the dignity of life. So collectively, all of these experiences really made me very passionate about supporting underrepresented groups, which led me to pursue my master's and then my PhD in counseling. And it's been 9 years and there's been no looking back, and I really enjoy what I do.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Apurvi. All right, I'm going to pass it to Sophia, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Sophia Nakabayashi. I live in Santa Monica, currently working as a mental health counselor at a university. Growing up, I had a difficult relationship with my dad. And also society as a whole felt very repressive At that time, I often felt judged and misunderstood. And I was one of those teenagers that often got sent to the counselor's office and never felt understood and heard. That experience, just growing up, experiencing that constant agony and discord within myself and my environment, that struggle actually sparked my interest in learning about human psyche and human behavior. My dad, though, through his action, really helped me see the duality of life. In our Buddhist view, the ignorance and the enlightened aspect of life. Through my Buddhist practice also, and my journey to become a psychotherapist, I was able to heal and transform my relationship, not only with my dad, but also with myself. I now can say with confidence that I truly, through this journey, I was able to develop deep appreciation for myself and for my father.
Wow. Thank you, Sophia. It's interesting, I think, with all of you, there's definitely the personal aspect and connection that really motivates the work that you do. So, Cam, I'll pass it to you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on this podcast. I'm really grateful to be here. In seventh grade, I thought that I wanted to be a neuroscientist and study the brain. And I had that passion and idea until I went to college and I was in a lab and I didn't like it. So I was also during that time struggling a lot with personal anxiety, and that was the same year that I got to hear about Buddhism. So it was basically this really intense time in my life where I struggled a lot with self-critical thinking and self-worth, and I was able to, through my Buddhist practice, create value out of a lot of those things that I saw as weaknesses. And it made me want to work with other people that have experienced similar struggles. I learned as well through other summer jobs that I love working with kids, and that community is really important to me. And with time, I was able to find the field of school psychology, which incorporates those different aspects. And I went to graduate school for school psychology. I graduated 4 years ago, and now I work in Boston Public Schools as a school psychologist.
Wow, thank you guys so much. I think to kind of start things out, today we'll talk about, all different kinds of relationships. So, be friendships, family, romantic, relationships with ourselves, coworkers, anything. But I think to kind of focus things at the start, we can just talk about friendships, because I think many young people today are really struggling to find deep and close friendships, especially I've found those that were in K through 12 education during COVID, I think was really challenging socially for so many people. So based on maybe your professional experience, what are some of the most common challenges you see with people that are struggling to have good friendships or even other types of relationships, and ways to overcome those? And if you'd like to sort of, incorporate in Buddhism, please go ahead, but I'll leave it open, who wants to start first?
Currently I work with college-age students, but prior to this, I was also working in another school setting. It was in a non-public school setting where, the student population I worked with, it was K through 12 and some, young adults. I can see, for sure, during COVID and also post-COVID, the impact, right? Our students, often I see the social anxiety and, isolation, and also kind of not knowing, how to engage or interact socially. And then with the population, college students I work with, oftentimes they seek mental health support because they struggle, right? They struggle to to find their community or that friendship, to develop that felt sense of belonging. And I see often students, they tend to seek external validation, kind of an instant dopamine sort of gratification, to fill the void and difficult feelings, such as loneliness, alienation, hopelessness, or even disappointment. But it's kind of tricky, right? Because we all know, seeking external validation or means to fill that void, often can lead us feel powerless. In a sense, we're giving the power away to our environment, and so we're solely dependent on our environments for our happiness, right? And so when that one thing doesn't happen or that one person doesn't turn up, then the world crumbles. And so I see that often. And what I try to instill or encourage students to do is I often would encourage them to return to themselves and take a proactive stance, right? For instance, if you're seeking good friendships, right, rather than waiting for people to show up for you, then what are the steps you can take to develop yourself so that you become that good friend who can show up and support others, right? So that's kind of the approach that I take, and I feel that it is consistent with our Buddhist practice, the Buddhist teaching of to never seek the law outside of ourselves, right?
One question I'm thinking of is of course in Buddhism we really challenge ourselves to bring out everything from our own life rather than seeking externally for our happiness. But that doesn't mean we don't care about the external things, right? So how can a young person be really seeking good, nourishing friendships and know that they're not seeking something outside of themselves or relying on that friendship for their happiness?
That's a great question. I think we are social beings. We need connection. We need to be engaged in our societies and where we live, the work that we do. That's what brings meaning. And I think there is no one clear answer when you know that it becomes unhealthy. It really varies from person to person, and you have to find that on your own and recognize when are you possibly engaging in something that may be unhealthy or impacting your functioning in a way. So I think there are a lot of different challenges that people can encounter, and that's going to shape their life in different ways. So, a few that I was really thinking about earlier were, and I think people also really fear being vulnerable nowadays, right? That one is really common, that they run away once they get too close, right? There's this fear that people are going to see something, they're going to be exposed in some way, right? Which is definitely an unsafe feeling to experience, but that oftentimes impacts the kind of relationships that you can have, whether it's friendship, romantic, or with family members or neighbors, any relationship. And a common one that I hear from my students is fear of rejection. And people many times, want to distance themselves before they can be hurt, right? So let me protect myself before someone else can really, come and cause me any sort of harm, which, of course, to their life, it makes sense, right? Because it's not served them in the past. So your body and minds are trying to protect you. But also, it prevents you from engaging in some of those healthy ways of relating with the world and yourself. Of course, there are so many different reasons why friendships, relationships can be challenging. Judgments can be one when we're many times, judgmental towards other people. And there's research that talks about judgment comes from a place many times to feel better about ourselves. So it makes us feel superior. It maybe makes us feel more worthy. And of course, that causes distance between you and the people that you're trying to engage in. I think we really need to go and dig deeper into what is it in our life that's contributing to maybe some sort of distress in the relationship that we're in. And, I was really reflecting on Josai Toda's guidance where he talks about this glass which has water in it, and there's like mud or sediments at the bottom. And if you take a spoon and you stir the water, now it's muddy water. It's no longer clear water. And you don't go to the spoon and blame the spoon for making the water muddy, right? The sediment and the mud was already there. But we do that in our real life so many times where we kind of blame the environment or, kind of look for something outside to justify our lived experience. And not to say that, people do things, of course, right? I don't want to invalidate or dismiss that experience, but I think it's also really important for us to think about what is present in our life, right? Because I think our relationships really reflect that inner world of ours and really speaks to that concept of oneness of self and environment too.
Apoorvi, I really appreciate you sharing that. I was reflecting on vulnerability recently, very in line with what you were just sharing. And I identify as a man and grew up conditioned as a man in culture. And I think part of that is being conditioned to not express weakness or share feelings. And for a long time in my life, I didn't feel comfortable being vulnerable. And that's actually like a big reason why when I was early on in college, I went through that like mental health crisis of having like very, very intense anxiety and self-critical thinking. I didn't let anyone into my life. I kept everyone at like arm's distance, including my family. And I think that led to a lot of anger towards myself and not being able to work through these deeper feelings. And I feel like in relation to that question of what are some of the common challenges in relationships and in friendships, I feel like not being vulnerable with the other person can limit the extent to which a connection can form. And I feel like for me, I started chanting in college, and before I practiced, like I mentioned, I wasn't open and vulnerable with others. But what I learned through this practice is that we can bring forth courage from our life through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And I felt a difference when I would chant, and I felt this greater capacity to be courageous, and part of that was in conversation with others and starting to share more about myself and my insecurities and my feelings with other friends of mine and family. And I noticed that when I did that, it often opened up doors for them to express themselves in a similar way. And that created a much deeper connection between us. So I can still struggle with this wanting to overcome fear of rejection, because that's still a deep part of my life. But I find that when I'm able to initiate and be vulnerable first, I think that that's a huge cause towards the relationship of that person that I'm interacting with, and that it also provides a space where they can be vulnerable if they feel like they would like to be.
I love that. I think that really speaks to the concept of human revolution that we talk about in our practice, right? And like human revolution is really how do we shift that relationship with our own life? That's what it really is. And it's sometimes bringing out that courage, and sometimes it's working through an insecurity, and that really reflects in our environment too. And I was thinking back to an experience in high school with my cousin, actually. And, we were very close. We still are very close. But I remember, she would come to me and share parts of her life with me and about her friends and, other family members and all of that. And there came a time when I started to respond to her with a lot of judgment, or like started making fun of her, or, taking a dig at her or something. And over time, she stopped sharing her feelings with me. And I was like, damn, what happened? You know? And I had to really dig deeper in my own life. Like there was something I was doing to really create that distance in our relationship. When I really became aware of that, I realized I wasn't creating safety for her, right? I wasn't seeing her for who she is. I wasn't accepting her. I wasn't embracing her. And I had to work through that piece to be able to improve that relationship as well. And I still continue to work on it. Every day something comes up, right? And you're like, damn, why did I respond in that way? Or, why am I lacking courage in this moment? Or why do I have no compassion for this person? So I think it's a lifelong process to work on that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about like, when we think about relationships, it's like easy to point out at the other person, right? They're doing this wrong. They hurt my feelings, or they're not listening to me, whatever the case may be. And those things might be true, but a relationship is two people. And so what I find that often we don't talk about our relationship with ourselves and like how that also impacts our relationships. And I feel like you guys have definitely touched on that, but I'm wondering if you could just, share a little bit more about how our relationship with ourselves also can impact our relationship with others.
Going back to, the concept that came up earlier, oneness of life and its environment. It's true, relationship with oneself, often impact relationships with others. There was this famous author, there's something that she said I resonate deeply with. She said that we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are, right? And so, I think when we're in discord with ourselves, then we could react to people around us in a negative way. And also, I remember Daisaki Kida also said, right, if you can't like yourself, then you can't love others. And so, I think, it says something about, right, our relationship with ourselves. And so then when we operate, from a place of disbelief or insecurity, right, for instance, I'm less than, for a long time in my life, for instance, growing up, I often felt that I did not matter, right? I'm less than, or I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough, right? So when I operate from that place of insecurity, then, often, right, it impacts people around me, right? Because I could become emotionally reactive, or I lash out. When I operate from that place, then, how it also negatively impacts my relationship with others. Whereas when I operate from that, that enlightened place, right, then it also, right, can create harmony and beauty, in my relationship with others, and also with myself.
For somebody listening that maybe is like has gotten to the point that they recognize, okay, I can see maybe some things about myself are causing conflict, but what do I do after that? I can see the thing, but how do I change it? So I'm wondering, both from a psychological perspective and a Buddhist perspective, how can we change our relationship with ourselves so that we can improve our relationships?
I think chanting helps a lot. Right. I think it helps bring out your elevated life state. It helps break through that lesser self, and brings out this wisdom and courage and compassion, which helps you see things from a very different lens, right? Not from the lens with which you're typically seeing life and also engaging with life. So I think that's like one very practical way of, you know, addressing some of those feelings that you maybe are wrestling with. I think having a very good friend can really help, where you can always have conversations about, maybe what you're challenging. And I think when you're feeling heard and seen, you instantly start to break through anyway. So actually, a few days ago, I was having this conversation with a few of my students, and they were sharing how they struggle to ask for help. And so we were just having a conversation about that, and different feelings were coming up around feeling like maybe I'm not so important, or I'm like a burden, or no one cares about me, or no one loves me, and all of those different things. And we just kind of were reflecting together, and we were like, how do we feel about ourselves? Let's pause and really talk about what's our relationship with our life, right? Do you feel like you're worthy? Do you feel like you're important? Do you feel like do you deserve that love and care, right? And then you'll find that many times you actually are finding relationships that confirm how you feel about yourself, right?
No,
Cassidy.
that's right. Yes.
It's very common because that's your template, right? So you want to confirm that. So you end up finding people who continue to make you feel that way. Or in other circumstances, even if people are not doing anything, because that's how you view yourself, you start to maybe overthink or dig deeper into things that actually may not have any additional, value to it as well. So,
Right. Creating scenarios. Right. Creating scenarios in our head.
Yeah.
Or, creating a mini Netflix series in our head.
Totally.
that's so accurate.
That's not there. Yeah.
And I think, we're talking about all these things, but I think we need to do it with a lot of compassion towards our life, right? We've all had experiences in our life that are challenging, and there are reasons behind why we are the way we are. So we definitely want to hold that love and care for ourselves while acknowledging that some of these things maybe were not so great, right? And that's the concept of 10 worlds that we talk about, right? We have all these different life states, and only when we acknowledge everything are we truly human. And then when we acknowledge the suffering, then we can also move forward and tap into that highest potential in our life.
I feel like that ties in really nicely too with like creating value, because I like there's a lot of aspects of myself that like I find on the surface are like, oh, these are like weaknesses, and I think that and like a kind of like a foundation for that love is like acceptance, like kind of accepting like this is who I am. So like for me, I'm someone that's very sensitive and very averse to conflict. I can be timid and like not kind of courageously take action but hold back, and I can be really hard on myself for that. And there's this guidance, this encouragement from my mentor Daisaku Ikeda regarding this that I wanted to share, where he first talks about encouraging ourselves, and then he talks about this aspect of insecurities. So he says, people, just like flowers, need light. People's hearts wither when no one values or cares about them. So please be the sun that imparts bright light to all. People, like flowers, also need water. Our hearts wither if we don't encourage ourselves, make ourselves happy, and speak our own enthusiasm. Those who can encourage themselves are truly inspiring. They understand the pain and suffering of others, find the words, strength, and wisdom to bring happiness to your own heart. When you're feeling down, lift up your own spirits. If you can't like yourself, you can't love others. And then he says, if you're shy and sensitive, this is directed towards me, that's perfectly fine. Being thick-skinned and insensitive is not a requirement for being an adult. Flowers aren't made of concrete either. They are soft, delicate, and fragile. Those who remain sensitive to others' thoughts and feelings, their whole lives are truly strong. So this is very encouraging for me to hear, because I think a big concept in our practice is cherry, peach, plum, and damson, which is basically that all these different fruits have beautiful qualities that are unique to themselves. A big part of my continual human revolution and growing as a person is trying to like uncover those traits and also see the flip side of some things that might be seen as insecurities at first.
I think that's Cam's strength, to be very honest with you. I don't know if you remember, 2 months ago we were playing pickleball together, and it was my first time playing, and I was not skilled at it at all. And I was like, Cam, and we were on the same team, and I was like, Cam, we have to win. Like, we just have to, like my competitive side was coming out, and oh my gosh, I was terrible. And Cam was so gentle, so kind. It just felt like all those things that he's noting to be a challenge actually were his greatest strengths, because we had a blast. We had so much fun together, and he was cheering me on. And I was like, damn, that's how I want someone else to feel too. So I think that was a really nice experience of, sharing how we change poison into medicine, or, challenges into our mission. And it just really becomes jewels that are shining.
Yeah, I love that quote you shared, Cam. That's actually one of my favorite quotes. I often share with the students that I work with, and I connect that with self-love and true self. True self from the four virtues. That to me, it's about also uncover our true authentic self, right? Because and also having a deeper understanding of the true nature or the core of our sufferings, because without truly understanding the nature of our life, especially suffering, then we can't love ourselves and others.
Yeah, I mean, central or core to Buddhism is the belief that every single person has this Buddhahood or, Buddha nature potential for enlightenment. And because of that, like, our lives are so precious. Every single person's life is this great treasure. So of course that means, believing that about ourselves and believing that about others. And for myself, like, chanting is really the way that I can like tap into that like conviction. But of course, maybe some of us are like, okay, I really believe that I'm a Buddha. I feel good about myself. But man, my uncle, there's no way. So I'm thinking like, this episode will come out around the time of the holidays. And so people will very likely be around family, which means there may be conflict. So I'm wondering if you guys can share some advice from, Buddhist perspective, psychological perspective, just the best way to handle conflicts, like some examples, or even like from your own life, your own families.
I mean, the reality is conflicts will happen in any relationship. If it's not happening, then maybe there's like not as much closeness. But no two people will have the same exact experience or the same exact perception of something. So it's given that a conflict will happen at some point, but it's really about how do you repair it, right? How do you repair that rupture? That's really the key. And that's what is really hard, right? Because if you don't repair it, maybe we get resentful. Sometimes, like, for me, it's really hard to be normal. If I'm holding something in my heart, it'll show on my face very clearly. So I love the support I'm getting from Cam. Thank you. But but I think it's really hard to wrestle with that, right? Resentment and all those feelings that are coming up. And that's where chanting really helps me, because I just take my anger or feelings of feeling unheard or this fear all to, the Gohanzon and really chant. And in that moment, even though I start chanting feeling really crappy, right, I end up feeling very different at the end, right? Either I bring out compassion from my life to see this person's suffering, or understand that there is shared humanity, that this person too has fears and anxieties and different challenges just like I do. So how can I deepen my compassion there? Or sometimes it's really bringing out courage from my life that I need to have a dialogue with this person. And then you have to be ready and open minded enough to allow someone else to change your perspective, or maybe apologize for things that you may have done that are, hurtful, or you may get perspective into, how they perceive the situation. But I think all of those things are really important for us to live in harmony with one another, because it's very easy in today's time to be like, oh, I'm just going to cut this person off, right? I never have to see this person. And it's really hard to be able to work through something. And our lives are long and we'll have many people that we disagree with. So learning to do that, I think, is very important.
I love what you share about courage, right? Having the courage to have dialogue. And, real dialogue sometimes, could be uncomfortable. Sometimes it involves us having the courage to also hear what we don't want to hear about ourselves. It could be difficult, right? In our Buddhist practice, because it's such a transformative sort of practice, right? So how our Buddhist practice works then even in this situation, right? In this moment of disharmony, that we could actually transform. And so how we look at it, right? We can perhaps try to see the situation as an opportunity to learn, right? Rather than seeing the conflict or arguments as something to win or to prove, right? Because, you can be all the rights but still feel miserable, right? If we look at it, as an opportunity to learn about ourselves, how we relate, to ourselves in this situation, and how we relate to the other person, right? The truth is that we are both Buddhas, right? We both, right, have that enlightened aspect, even though at this moment we don't see eye to eye, right? But we can either focus on our differences or try to find commonalities, right? And improve our relationship.
Yeah, to have that deep respect for their life, even though there's a disagreement. That's a great point, Sophia. I was just reflecting, so one is from like a psychological perspective, one's from a Buddhist perspective. So one is, I grew up in a family with all engineers. My parents are engineers. My brother's an engineer. So they're very logical. And every time we'd have like conversations, I bring up a problem, it's always like, let's try to figure out the solution. But sometimes I would bring things up. Maybe it's like I'm frustrated with a classmate or something, and I just want to be heard. Yeah. I just want to be validated. Yes. I don't want a solution. Yes. And I remember I took a class in college, a counseling, my first like intro to counseling class. And they taught us this technique that like blew my mind, because I was under this paradigm of always, whenever someone has a question or has a problem, I jump to the solution. But the class spoke about this acronym called OARS. So OARS. And that's 4 things that you can do to create a space that is more open and allows a person to really share freely. So the O is for open-ended questions. So asking things that don't end up with a one-word answer, which might be how, what, who, these things. Number 2 is affirmations. So you're affirming something about that person. So let's say they're venting about their coworker. Maybe it's like, oh, wow, you care really deeply about this. Or you're really passionate. But it's affirming, finding something to affirm about them, which is still genuine. The third is reflecting. So if someone expresses a frustration about a person, you're kind of reflecting back, oh, it sounds like you're frustrated about this. So you're just reflecting back exactly what they shared, but that allows for the other person to continue. And they feel heard and they can continue. And the fourth one is summarizing. So if someone shares a lot of different things, Okay, so from what I'm hearing, you share, you're mad about the situation, but you feel like there's a solution here, but you also are uncertain about a way forward. And then either A, they could say, yeah, that's true, and then they could elaborate, or B, they could say, actually, that's not what I meant. And then they could switch gears or clarify. So that's something that like I want to apply more in my life, in my daily interactions. And I found it really helpful to learn about that. That's like the psychological side. And then the Buddhist side is I really appreciate the opportunity to chant for another person's happiness. It's something that I feel like changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. And when I chant about someone's happiness, it allows me to tap into compassion for them. So, for example, this isn't family, but I had a really tough coworker before, and that really just didn't like me and would give very short answers. And I was so anxious being around this person, but I started to chant for her happiness every day, and I realized all the ways that she was suffering in her personal life and things in work, and it made me really understand that the way that she was acting was coming from a place of suffering and not taking it personally. And that helped me kind of take action from that place of like, I care about this person rather than I'm reacting to them. And it totally changed our relationship over the next year. So I think those two things together, like oars plus chanting for someone's happiness, are a great 1-2 combo to move forward in a challenging relationship situation.
Love that.
One kind of relationship we haven't really talked about is like romantic relationships and partnership. So I'm wondering maybe just if each of you could share a little bit of like the Buddhist perspective on partnerships and relationships, and maybe the psychological side of like how to have healthy and like nourishing partnerships.
I think the sooner we realize that our partner cannot give us self-worth or self-love, the sooner we realize that, the better our self-development. Because at the end of the day, really, we have to come back to ourselves. So if you think about after the initial kind of honeymoon or romanticizing stage of the relationship, you still have to, right? Two people coming together, you still have to sort of face the dynamics that you both bring into the relationship. And a lot of it involves, from our Buddhist point of view, our fundamental ignorance or the disbelief. And so when we engage in that romantic relationship with our partner, sometimes, right, conflicts, whatnot, from that place of insecurity, then, right, we again tend to lash out or react, right? Whereas, when we focus on finding that place of that enlightened aspect of our life, finding that place of self-love, self-validation, the place of security, right? In a sense, tapping into, that the amazing resource we have that is within our life, then we're able to, in a sense, right, kind of return to the home, right, the home that's in our lives, and then we are able to sort of feel at ease and secure.
I think, as like you guys had touched on earlier, relationships can be so nourishing, but the important thing is to recognize that like we don't get our self-worth from anything external to ourselves. Like even if you have a partner that like treasures you. Like, my wife is incredible and she loves me so much, but some days I'm having a bad day, and it doesn't matter how much she loves me. It's still something in my own life that I really need to,
Right.
and of course her support can help me, but ultimately it has to come from my own life. And the other thing I was thinking is back to the conflict and having the courage to hear things about yourself that you don't want to. Something that I really appreciate in my relationship is that with all like love and kindness, my partner will be straight up with me, like, oh, this is like a tendency that you have and I'm here to support you, but this is not my thing. And it can be hard to hear those things, but I think when I chant and I can really like open up my life, I realize like, wow, actually she has so much compassion for me to like help me see the things that are causing me suffering, not just in this relationship, but in other relationships too. So something that, to me is very important in partnership and friendship and family relationships too, is like people that really help me grow. And I think that's probably like a Buddhist perspective too.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about Daisaku Iketa's guidance instantly, where he talks about two people in love are, two people walking alongside each other, walking ahead, but not really, looking at each other. And then you forget your purpose and your dreams, and then, just falling around. So I think it's really important that we recognize that companion really helps us achieve our own dreams, and we help them achieve their own dreams. And for that, we have to be strong, right? Because if we're not strong, then that hole that we have in our life, then we're expecting this partner to fill in. It's like almost like a puzzle, and we're just searching for that last piece, and it's going to be perfect. But that's not how it is. Then our happiness doesn't depend on having a partner or having a job or having XYZ. Of course, it adds meaning to our life, but it really comes from our relationship with our own self. And love is exciting. It's, great. People who, are looking forward to finding their partners or are, looking forward to get married, and people who maybe are wrestling in their relationships. And I think every aspect of that relationship, whichever phase you're in, really requires us to dig deeper into our own life, right? If you're like really wanting someone, are you feeling like having this person is going to make me feel like so worthy now, or like I've like met this milestone in my life, or if I like resolve this one thing, life is going to be great. So I think it's very different. I think for each person, we just have to be willing to dig deeper, because it starts from our life. And when we go through that inner shift, and that's where our practice really helps us, is to become, that strong, unshakable person where, we can want a partner, but we don't need a partner. There's a difference between the two.
We're so in rhythm. I was thinking of the exact same encouragement that I poured with Sharon.
Perfect.
Looking together versus...
We're all in rhythm.
Yes.
So united.
On a pickleball court, you don't look at each other, you look ahead.
Exactly. We've talked so much about like the interpersonal relationships with ourselves. And sometimes, like in a day-to-day context, we can think that's just the extent of it. It's just this immediate relationship is being repaired. But the Buddhist perspective is that, the power of just one friendship is how we can cultivate peace on a societal scale. So, Apurvi, I'm wondering if like maybe you can start and share a little bit there, and then we can just open up the dialogue to, discussing the connection between like the interpersonal and then societal change.
I feel like there's so much happening in the world right now, and even in this country. And the experience of each individual is so unique based on the different social identities that you have too, right? And then there are policies and systems and structures. There's this concept in counseling that we talk about, critical consciousness. It actually originates from the work of this Brazilian educator and philosopher, Paulo Freire. And he really talks about critical consciousness as this ongoing process of becoming aware of, power, privilege, oppression, and inequity that really operates in society. All of these things together shape our lives and experiences and relationships, all of that. But he takes it a little deeper, right? He talks about just that awareness is not enough, right? It has to include reflection as well as action. So it really goes into this idea of, do I believe that I can make a difference in the world? Which I think is so in line with our Buddhist philosophy, where Daisaku Ikeda really shares that quote, right? That a great human revolution in a single individual will help achieve change in the destiny of a nation, and as well as, the destiny of humankind as well. So I think, we really need to think more about how we're not powerless, and that hope is not overrated, right? Sometimes we hear that a lot, like toxic positivity and all of that. That's not our Buddhist practice, and that's also not what research is asking us to do, right? It really talks about how when we change, and through interactions with even one more person, or interactions with the people who we live with, our neighbors, or in our communities, all of that can really create this peaceful society. And then we don't have to be so bogged down by what's happening, because sometimes we end up just feeling so helpless and anxious about everything, and it's valid. It's not like you're just feeling all of that for no reason. It's valid, we're living in hard times. But I think we also have to recognize that power in our life, and that ripple effect that even one dialogue, one peace dialogue can have, where we live.
What you just shared about the one-to-one connection, even having dialogue with even just one more person, that kind of one-to-one connection on society, it's so needed right now. And I hear about different parts of the country where people try to create opportunities to mingle, to just come together, like no agenda, just really connect and get to know each other, that sort of thing. And it also reminded me of this Harvard study. You probably are aware of, the world's longest scientific study of happiness. I think a book it came out a while ago, The Good Life. They follow, right, hundreds of participants from 1930 something, all the way to, just continue to follow their lives. And what they found is how engaging in, this social activities, building connections, friendships, could have really beneficial impact on our well-being, social, emotionally, but also physically, mentally, psychologically. So, it's really incredible. In our Buddhist community, we're focusing on, right, strengthening friendships, strengthening our community.
That makes me think too, is like, I feel like the way that society is going to change is if people are in tune with their hearts and not like just caught up like in their head. The head is kind of where a lot of like the judgment piece and strategy. I guess so for me personally, when I went through that experience in college where I was like super anxious, wasn't letting anyone into my life, I was not connected to my heart at all. When I started practicing Buddhism, and part of it was chanting and part of it was like connecting to like the local community, and once a month we'd have these gatherings in someone's home, open up their home, we get together, and often have like wonderful conversations about different topics. And I remember going to these gatherings, I was 19, and there was this woman that was there, and she was like my grandmother's age, but she would always take time to connect with me. And, our conversations might only be like 5 minutes long, but through having opportunities to connect one-to-one with her, that really helped me connect with my heart, which I was like so disconnected from for so long. But it was like just that one person taking a few minutes each time I saw her to connect with me totally changed my life. And it was like from that place of being like more connected with my heart that I was able to be more intentional, and I was able to connect better with others. So I guess that experience highlights for me that the greatest areas of growth in my life have come from opportunities to connect one-to-one. And like that's like so needed in order for me to experience joy and like grow as a person. And I think of these different people that have taken time to listen to me and to be able to have these like intentional dialogues, even if they haven't been that long. Those are the things that have changed my life so much more than maybe taking like a 300-person lecture class in college. So yeah, one-to-one I feel like is the way for things to move and shift.
Oh, that was great. So thank you guys so much for this dialogue. This has been really incredible. To close things out, every episode I ask people to share some advice. So for each of you, what piece of advice you would give to somebody that really wants to change some relationship in their life, but they don't know where to start?
So again, change starts with me, right? And it starts with us taking personal responsibility first, because what we do, how we show up, how we respond to the other person, that is on us, right? That we have control over. And then another thing is to shift our energy towards noticing and bringing out the good in not only ourselves, but also others. I feel that initiative will help us uncover our true best self and in turn transform the relationship with others. Also in my line of work, I feel equally as important is to tap into the positive self-belief or fundamental enlightenment in the Buddhist term, and going back to that encouragement that Cam shared to become someone who can empower and encourage themselves.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Sophia. I think the fact that you're ready to change, you've already won. I think that you want something different for your life and your relationship. That itself is huge. And I think it's really important that we praise ourselves, and really like understand how indispensable we are and how precious our lives are. I think only when we deeply value ourselves can we move forward, right? And shift things around. And really that belief of that in that highest potential, that unlimited potential that we have, which is there, right, for each one of us, but it just gets covered with our fear and anxiety and insecurities and all of that. But it's just really that battle of like, just getting that rust off. And that's what chanting helps us with. So if you're like new to this practice, I would like really consider chanting for a few minutes so you can really see for yourself, right? We're all adults, so we can make decisions for ourselves around how that experience is. And then the last thing I'll say is please find a community. I think we are social beings. We need support, and we need people who genuinely want us to become happy. And that's something that I've really felt so deeply in our Buddhist community. So you're, of course, welcome to join us. But, a community support, I think, is the greatest gift you can give to yourself, along with all the other things that we've shared.
Makes it poor V. So much wisdom in what you just said. I would say if there's one thing that I'd recommend in changing a challenging relationship, I would say appreciation. I think appreciation opens doors. And I think like, for me, appreciation doesn't come naturally, but there is a tool that I have to bring out appreciation. And that's chanting. And especially with chanting with the prayer that I want to feel appreciation for this person. So I would say if there's a really challenging person, chanting like, I want to find something that I appreciate about this person, and then share it with them. And there's this really great quote from Daisaku Ikeda where he talks about the miraculous words, thank you. And he says, thank you is a miraculous expression. It energizes us when we say it to others and encourages us when we hear it said to us. I am constantly saying thank you from morning to night every day. When I travel abroad, it is the one expression from the language of the country I am visiting that I always learn and use. I feel like what he's getting at is that appreciation is like the gateway to someone's heart, and that we can't change someone or the relationship if it's just stuck, like living in our heads, battling back and forth. Yes, appreciation is so powerful.